I really do stand before you a man that's totally humbled by the magnitude of this entire experience. It's unbelievable. To be honest, this historic annual baseball ritual is truly the finishing touch on what was an extremely rewarding career. To my friends, baseball dignitaries, and most of all you loyal fans and your families who've traveled many miles to be here, I'm honored and flattered that you came to Cooperstown.
So have you ever asked yourself, just who are the Phillies who are in the Hall of Fame? Well, in this series of videos, we're going to try to help you answer that question. Welcome to Philadelphia Baseball History. On this channel, we talk about the history of baseball from the A's to the Phillies to the 19th century. And sometimes we talk about contemporary baseball issues. So if you love baseball and if you love Philadelphia, stick around and subscribe to our channel. How do you show your home team pride? With mugs, T-shirts, masks, phone cases, tote bags, and so much more. Check out tpublic.com and search for Philadelphia Baseball History. So have you ever been to the Hall of Fame Club at Citizens Bank Park? That's the seating at the 200 level in the infield. It's a little more expensive than your regular seating, but it's well worth it. Particularly on a hot summer night, because you have access to the air conditioning. Well, in the Hall of Fame Club, there's an area where the Phillies have a series of 17 portraits of men who are connected to the Phillies who are in the Hall of Fame. And if you've ever seen these portraits, it may raise the question, are these the only 17 men connected to the Phillies who are in the Hall of Fame? Well, to their credit, the Phillies never make the claim that these 17 men are the only Phillies in the Hall of Fame, because quite frankly, the list is both over-inclusive and under-inclusive, depending on what your criteria are. For example, if your criteria are those people who made it to the Hall of Fame because of their contribution to the sport as Philadelphia Phillies, well, then that list of 17 names is over-inclusive. If your criteria is anybody who's in the Hall of Fame who spent a significant time with the Phillies, let's say an arbitrary number like 3 years, well, then the list is under-inclusive, because there are a significant number of men who are in the Hall of Fame because of their connection with another team, but who have spent at least 3 years with the Phillies. So in this series of videos, we're going to help you determine who are the people in the Hall of Fame who have had a connection with the Philadelphia Phillies. Let's talk a little bit about what our criteria are. We're going to be looking year by year, class by class, and we're going to identify anybody who has played at least one game for the Philadelphia Phillies. And then I'm going to try to tell you a little something interesting about the player, because if I just sat here and listed a bunch of players, well, that'd be a really boring video. But we're going to break this up into a series of videos, because I don't want this video to become unmanageable. I prefer to keep my videos between 10 and 20 minutes. And if we go class by class and identify everybody who has played at least one game with the Phillies, well, we could be here for some time. So here's our first video in the series. Who are the Phillies in the Hall of Fame? The first Hall of Fame class was in 1936. There were 5 members of the class, and these were the best of the best, the legends of baseball. This class included players like Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth. So no, there were no Phillies in the 1936 class of inductees. But Phillies fans didn't have to wait too long. The first player with a connection to the Phillies who was inducted in the Hall of Fame was part of the class of 1937. That was Napoleon Lajoie. Nap Lajoie was a very good hitting second baseman. He played with the Phillies in the last part of the 19th century and then jumped to the American League in 1901. Once in the American League, Nap Lajoie gave Ty Cobb a run for his money almost every year for the batting title. 1901 was the first year that the American League became a rival major league to the National League. And many of the upstart teams in the American League, well, they would try to lure away all the best players from the National League by offering higher paid contracts. Connie Mack and the Philadelphia Athletics were no different. So when Connie Mack offered more money for the Phillies stars to jump leagues and play for the Philadelphia Athletics, A number of the Phillies took him up on the offer, and that included Napoleon Lajoie. Really, it wasn't very hard to do. Phillies players were not very fond of Phillies managing owner Colonel John Rogers. This is because Rogers was known to be really stingy, so he wouldn't pay the players what they were worth. And this being the era of the reserve clause, it's not like the players had much choice. So of course, many of the players jumped at the opportunity of making more money. But Colonel Rogers wasn't going to take this lying down. He filed for an injunction to prevent any of the players who jumped from the Phillies from playing baseball professionally for any team other than the Phillies. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court granted that injunction. But because it came from a Pennsylvania state court, it was only enforceable in the state of Pennsylvania. So Connie Mack came up with a solution. He worked out a deal where Lajoie and other former Phillies were traded to Cleveland. And so Lajoie is mostly known for his time with Cleveland. In fact, the Cleveland team at first was known as the Cleveland Naps. They called themselves the Naps in order to honor their best player. Eventually, the two leagues worked out peace, and the injunction became irrelevant. So next we have the class of 1938. That included Phillies' legendary pitcher, Grover Cleveland Alexander, Old Pete. Old Pete had a 20-year career. 8 of those years he spent with the Phillies. Alexander broke into the league in 1910 with the Phillies, and he was part of the 1915 pennant-winning team. During his time in Philadelphia, Alexander led the National League in wins 5 times. He led the Major Leagues 4. He led the National League in ERA 3 times, leading the majors twice. He was a workhorse, leading the National League in innings pitched 6 times and leading the majors twice. And he led the National League in strikeouts 5 times, again leading the majors twice. But then Phillies president William Baker grew a little apprehensive around 1917. He thought that Alexander was going to be drafted for the First World War, and he was right. He traded Alexander before he was drafted, and when he came back from the war, Alexander still pitched well, but his career wasn't as good as when he played for the Phillies. Plus, like Colonel Rogers, Baker was known as being something of a cheapskate. He didn't want to pay Alexander what he was worth. So then Phillies fans had to wait a good 7 years before another player connected to the Phillies was inducted to the Hall of Fame. But in 1945, we had first Dan Brouthers, first baseman and considered to be the first slugger of the major leagues. He was known mostly for his time with Buffalo, Detroit, and Brooklyn. He was a 4-time batting champion, 2-time home run champion, and also a 2-time RBI champion. Brouthers spent 1 season with the Phillies, 1896. That season he played in 52 games and hit .344. He also had an OPS of .907. And that brings us to the first major Phillies superstar, Ed Delahanty. Delahanty had a 16-year career. 13 of those years he played in Philadelphia. Big Ed played for the Phillies from 1888 through 1901. Delahanty did take the 1890 season to play in the short-lived Players League in order to try to get a better salary. He played for Cleveland that year. He was mostly an outfielder and mostly a left fielder, although he did also play second base. Now, Big Ed was a special player. He could hit for power, he could hit for average, and he had speed, so he could steal bases. Delahanty was part of the 1894 Phillies outfield, where there were 4 outfielders, all of whom batted above 400. In fact, Delahanty hit over 400 3 times in his career. He was also the first Philly to hit 4 home runs in a single game, and this was during the dead ball era. Delahanty won the National League batting title in 1899 with an average of .410. And then in 1902, he won the American League batting title with an average of .376. He was the first player to win the batting titles in both leagues. Delahanty is still among the top in several of Phillies' all-time batting categories. For example, Delahanty is number 4 in the Phillies' all-time hit list with 2,214. Delahanty is currently number 3 in Phillies' WAR, total bases, and stolen bases. And Delahanty is second on the Phillies in lifetime batting average, offensive WAR, runs scored, singles, doubles, and RBIs. And Ed Delahanty still leads the Phillies in lifetime triples with 158. In fact, it's because he's so high in all these offensive categories that I believe that the Phillies have snubbed Ed Delahanty. You see, the Phillies have retired a P for 2 of their players. Grover Cleveland Alexander, because he played at a time before players wore numbers, and Chuck Klein, because he wore a number of different numbers when he played for the Phillies. Well, Ed Delahanty also played at a time before the players wore numbers, and the fact that he's still a leader in so many offensive categories Strikes me that he deserves to have a P retired for him as well. Unfortunately, Ed Delahanty is probably best known for his tragic death. In 1902, he wanted to leave the Washington Senators in order to try to join the New York Giants. He left the Senators while they were still playing in Detroit, boarded the train in order to go to New York. Despondent and depressed, he got drunk on the train. It was said that he threatened one of the passengers, and so the conductor threw Delahanty off the train at a station in Fort Erie in Ontario. It is believed that for one reason or another, Ed Delahanty followed the train over the International Train Bridge, and from the International Train Bridge, he plunged into the Niagara River. This was on July 2nd, 1903. 7 days later, his mutilated body was found in the Niagara Gorge. It's a tragic story of one of baseball's earliest superstars. We have Hugh Duffy. Hugh Duffy was an outfielder, player-manager, known mostly for his time with the Boston Bean Eaters. Today, they're the Atlanta Braves. Duffy had decent power, but he was known mostly for hitting for average. His lifetime average was .326. He played between 1886 and 1906. For the last 3 years of his career, 1904 through 1906, he was a player-manager for the Philadelphia Phillies. This brings us to Hugh Jennings, a shortstop and first baseman. Jennings played 18 years in the major leagues, mostly for the Baltimore Orioles. Now, this is the National League team known as the Baltimore Orioles, which is not connected to the current American League Baltimore Orioles. Jennings was a good hitting shortstop. His lifetime average was .311, and he spent 2 years with the Phillies, 1901 and 1902. Okay, that seems like a decent place to end it for this week. Again, I don't want these videos to get too long and unmanageable. So far, we've gone through the classes of 1936 through 1945. Well, let me know. Do you think we missed anybody? Are there anyone else who may have played for the Phils and inducted in that time period? Let us know in the comments below. What'd you think of this video? Give us a like, tell your friends about us, don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you have any ideas for topics that we can cover in the future, please let us know in the comments below. If you would like to see more of these videos, please consider becoming a patron through Patreon. Again, we'll have a link in the description box below.